those hooks driving to form the hard mate on the space-facing port of the International Space Station's Harmony module. And that soft capture system has retracted to bring the spacecraft even closer to form that hard capture. And you mentioned, Jesse, earlier that those 12 hooks, the 2 sets of 6, to firmly hold Dragon in place. That process will take about 15 minutes or so. So again, it just recently docked to the International Space Station about 2 minutes ago. So it'll take some time, and we also want to have that relative motion dampen out a little bit because, again, Dragon coming in very slowly, but still want that relative motion to dampen out. So the docking procedures well underway, and it'll take about 15 minutes or so. And after all of the docking events are successful, flight controllers will configure the Dragon spacecraft for docked operations and connect the power and data to the spacecraft. The Crew-11 crew will be able to get out of their spacesuits and set them up to dry and begin operations to get the hatches open and join the Expedition 73 crew on board the International Space Station. That includes pressurizing the vestibule and a round of leak checks, and we expect, again, to take it about 2 hours or so before the hatches open, and we'll continue to monitor along with that time frame. But again, they have docked at 2:27 a.m. Eastern Time as the space station and the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft orbiting over the Southeast Pacific Ocean. All of this will be followed by a welcoming ceremony before the crew goes into a safety briefing with the team already on board, Crew 10.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
Dragon copy is still with you.
And great to hear that communications to the ring retraction being completed. And again, the welcome ceremony and the crew will have that safety briefing with the Expedition 73 crew, and they'll get up to speed on all things International Space Station, and that'll more or less begin the handover period, the 3 full days of handover between the Crew-11 team and the Crew-10 crew, as they anticipate departing in the next few days after that handover complete can occur, and of course due to weather and splashdown opportunities available for Crew 10. So now that the soft capturing has been retracted, you're going to start hearing those call outs of the hooks driving and starting to create that hard mate to the International Space Station.
Yeah, and with the completion of the soft capture ring retraction, the hard capture sequence begins just about a couple minutes later, so we should hear the call out that that hard capture procedure sequence has begun here shortly.
So right now that docking procedure well underway, and we anticipate to have, like, from initial capture to completion takes about 15 minutes or so. So we'll continue to monitor as Dragon Endeavour has reached the International Space Station after, again, launching earlier this morning a full day's activity for the crew aboard, including NASA astronaut and commander of Crew-11, Zena Cardman, pilot and NASA astronaut Mike Fincke, mission specialist and JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui.
Station Houston, MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Copy.
And to round it out real quickly, Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov, as you heard the communications there, the hooks are driving now to form that hard mate and create that seal to have the spacecraft and the International Space Station locked up against each other. So we still have a few more moments to go before the docking can be completed. But it's not just the hooks as well. You need the umbilicals to be connected as well, Jesse. That's where the power, the communications comes from, to shift from using the solar panels on Dragon to provide that power for the spacecraft to then using the power provided by the International Space Station.
Yeah, exactly. It basically becomes a single unit when it's parked at the International Space Station, which I think is really cool. And again, the hard capture sequence has begun. Again, that's going to be 12 hooks driving in 6 at a time. We should hear a call out for the first 6 hooks completing and then the second 6 hooks completing. Once those 12 hooks have completed driving in, that is what completes the hard capture and completes the docking for the Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station.
And we're continuing to monitor along. Those first set of hooks are driving as we speak, and we'll hear those be completed, and then we'll hear that second set get underway. And again, the NASA SpaceX Crew-11 has arrived to the International Space Station, docking just a few moments ago at 2:27 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you're wondering what you're looking at on your screen, we are looking at a live view from the International Space Station, looking at Dragon as it's docked to the space station, although it is a bit dark, so we do have that port side light there. That is the Dragon spacecraft on the right hand of your screen.
Both Dragon and the International Space Station in that orbital nighttime. They just flew over the most southern regions of South America as they were making their way across the Pacific Ocean. Southeast Pacific is where they met together for that initial contact, and then they'll start making their way 51 degrees and change up the other direction as we continue to wait that second set of hooks to drive. And we're about 6 minutes away from the next orbital sunrise, which should provide some wonderful views of both the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station, illuminating the two coming together. And there you can see that live map of where they are right now as they just passed again over that southern region of South America and off the east coast of the continent, making its way up into the Atlantic Ocean. So the first set of hooks have completed, and now the second set is getting underway and driving as we speak.
If you look in your bottom right-hand corner, that graphic of the docking adapter, you could see the status. You can actually see that it's looks like it's loading, essentially in progress. That hard capture is in progress. Once that hard capture is complete, you'll see that graphic show that it's complete, which is pretty cool. Since we're not getting comms all the way through while everything's happening, this graphic helps provide a live view and status of what's going on.
So the first set of 6 have complete. Now we're awaiting the second set of 6 hooks to lock on and pull the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft even closer to the International Space Station, form the hard mate. And from there, the umbilicals, the power, the communications, everything will be transferred and connected over from Dragon running independently to being a part, as Jesse mentioned, as one unit and feeding off the power and communication system of the International Space Station. Dragon Endeavour and Crew-11 docked exactly 10 minutes ago while the two were flying a little more than 260 miles over the Southeast Pacific Ocean.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, hard capture complete.
Tracking copies on the big loop, hard capture complete.
All right, great news. Hard capture is now complete. Now that Dragon has completed the docking sequence, the spacecraft must undergo a handful of checks before we will be able to open the hatch. The crew on board Dragon will now get a chance to get out of their suits before moving into hatch operations, which I'm sure they're pretty excited about.
And that's right, and things are going to start picking up now inside the International Space Station as well, as NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers is going to begin the procedure of getting the station side
welcome to the
ready.
International Space Station. Your arrival is another milestone to what international commercial collaboration can accomplish. Zena, Mike, Kimiya, and Oleg, we have cold drinks, hot food, and hugs waiting. See you soon.
This is Dragon Endeavour on the big loop. Hello, Space Station. Crew-11 is here, and we are super excited to join Expedition 73. We will do our best to also be good stewards of our beautiful ISS during our stay. The ISS has been inhabited and crewed for almost 25 years. We look forward to celebrating with you.
That was wonderful to hear.
Space crew can't wait.
And that was wonderful to hear the communications from the International Space Station to the crew aboard Dragon Endeavour, welcoming them formally to the International Space Station. And you heard Colonel Mike Fincke talking, the pilot of Crew-11, Excited to share this moment, become a part of Expedition 73, but also be a part of history as the 25th anniversary of continuous human presence for the International Space Station coming up in November. Well, now the hatch opening and pressurization, the safety checks, everything getting underway, and that's where NASA's Nicole Ayers will kick things off and get the hatch on the station side ready to be opened and start pressurizing that area known as the vestibule, and that's between Dragon and the space station hatches. They've been at vacuum of space. They have to bring that up to a little more than 14 psi, which is about sea level for those here on Earth. And with Dragon docked, that's going to do it for us here in Hawthorne. But our coverage for Crew-11 will not stop.
That's right. In a minute, we're going to toss it over back to Sandra in Mission Control Houston, take us through the vestibule depressurization and hatch opening, when we'll see NASA astronauts Zena, Cardman, and Mike Fincke, along with JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui and Roscosmos Oleg Platonov.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, docking sequence complete. Ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connection shortly. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012 and begin post-docking cabin configuration per 4.400 in parallel.
Tracking copies all. We are activating 4.012 and 4.400.
Great news. They're proceeding with moving forward with getting the crew on the International Space Station. And as I was mentioning, the Crew-11 crew with Roscosmos, cosmonaut Oleg Platonov, all four of the crew will be floating into the International Space Station shortly, which is very exciting. But just a little recap of how they got here. They suited up. They took a short ride to Launch Complex 39A, where they ingressed the vehicle, the Dragon vehicle, on top of a Falcon 9 rocket. They lifted off from Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex 39A at 8:43 a.m. Pacific time, or 11:43 a.m. Eastern time on Friday, August 1st. Stage 1 came back, separated from the second stage in Dragon, came back and landed on landing zone 1, and the crew continued on their journey all day today. They've had a long phasing burn, making their way to the International Space Station. They've had 5 major burns on Dragon, and then finally docked with the International Space Station at 11:27 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, August 1st, or 2:27 a.m. Eastern time on August 2nd.
It's definitely been a full day for Crew-11, that's for sure, from launch to capture. And now that Crew-11 has arrived, we're looking ahead to the return of Crew-10. We'll be taking you along as they return home after their long-duration stay aboard the International Space Stations. Now, teams are assessing return dates, and they have announced during media breakouts that it will be no earlier than August 6th. But again, we'll continue to follow along, and it will be announced on nasa.gov, so be sure to tune in as NASA and SpaceX bring you that live coverage every step of their journey home. You can also follow us on X at SpaceX and NASA on social media for real-time updates. And again, thank you for watching. Go NASA, go SpaceX, and go Crew-11, and go Crew-10. For those of you watching on X, please head on over to NASA Plus and follow the coverage live for the welcome remarks, the hatch opening, and more.
And thank you, all of you, for joining us and being with us here in Hawthorne today. And thank you, Joseph, for being here with us today in Hawthorne, California. Thanks to everybody for tuning in.
It's been wonderful to work with you. And now we're going to toss it over to Sandra Jones at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston to continue sharing the mission as the crew prepares to board their home for the next few months, the International Space Station. Thank you.
Good morning again from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We just wrapped up our joint coverage with SpaceX of Crew-11's arrival to the International Space Station.
Kimiya, I've got you loud and clear on the cabin mic on the big loop.
You're also loud and clear. Thank you.
You're looking at a live view of a spacecraft that docked to the International Space Station at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning. This is Crew Dragon Endeavour. On board there are 4 crew members: NASA astronaut Zena Cardman, NASA astronaut Mike Fincke, JAXA or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Kimiya Yui, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov. The quartet launched to the International Space Station from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida just yesterday at 10:43 a.m. Central Time. Following their docking to the International Space Station about 20 minutes ago, there were procedures that were stepped through in order to create a hard capture between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. At this point, the docking sequence is now complete, which means the ring was fully retracted, the hooks were successfully driven, and the umbilical is extended, which means that Dragon is now drawing power from the International Space Station. So now we are underway for preps for the hatch opening process. We are anticipating hatch opening to occur at about 3:15 a.m. Central. However, this is a little bit variable for the time frame and can shift, so we will of course keep you updated. Following the hatch opening, we are targeting a welcome ceremony at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, which will include all 4 of the astronauts aboard Endeavour, as well as the 7 crew members on board the International Space Station.
We can give you the early go in step 1.1 of 2.102.
Copy, I'll put it to work. Thank you.
Now that Endeavour is docked, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers is working to secure some hardware that will move into the hatch operation procedures. First, the large hatch at Node 2 Zenith will be opened, which will give her access inside the pressurized mating adapter. And then we'll have to pressurize the vestibule, which is the small space between the hatches on Dragon and the International Space Station. Because this area was exposed to vacuum prior to docking, we need to fill it with air and make sure its pressure is nearly equal with the atmospheric pressure on Dragon and the space station. Ayers is going to use a small valve on the station's hatch to slowly introduce air into the vestibule. And flight controllers here in Houston will monitor the pressure and temperature readings inside to verify everything is leak-free before we get ready to open up the hatches. So again, we are targeting that hatch opening this morning around 3:15 a.m. Central Time. And about an hour after hatch opening, we are expecting a welcome ceremony to occur at 4:15 a.m. Central. We are continuing to get views of Dragon docked to the Zenith port of the International Space Station's Harmony module. The Zenith port is the space-facing port. Dragon did dock at 1:26 a.m. Central during a night pass, but now we are in a day pass, so we're getting some good views of Dragon. The International Space Station is currently flying 262 statute miles off the west coast of Africa. As we continue to monitor along for hatch opening procedures this morning, the main voices that you'll be hearing from inside the International Space Station are NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, who will be prime for repressurizing that vestibule we discussed, but you also hear the voice of NASA astronaut Johnny Kim, who monitored Dragon's approach from the cupola of the International Space Station. And we are getting another view here of Dragon, again docked to the Zenith port of the International Space Station. That's the space-facing port. Slightly to the left, you can make out the nose cone of another Dragon spacecraft, the Crew-11 spacecraft that is docked to the forward port of the International Space Station, or the Earth-facing port. Crew-10 will be departing the International Space Station here in the coming days, but before that takes place, the newly arrived Crew-11 crew will work through handover procedures, including a safety briefing and getting oriented to space station life. While we do have 2 returning flyers to the International Space Station, we do have 2 first-time flyers. That includes NASA astronaut Zena Cardman, who is the commander of Dragon Endeavour, as well as Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos, who served as a mission specialist aboard Dragon. Once Crew-10 undocks from the International Space Station, they will splash down off the coast of California. This will actually be the very first time that a crew, as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, does splash down off the coast of California. The Axiom Mission 4, one of the private astronaut missions for the agency, did recently splash down off the coast of California, but this will be the first for the CCP program.
Houston station on to the node 2 cam 1 is on. You guys are welcome aboard.
Copy all. We'll put that in work.
Again, this is a view of the recently arrived Dragon Endeavour, which docked to the International Space Station at 1:26 a.m. Central Time this morning. Inside the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers is working through procedures to pressurize the vestibule, which is the small space between the hatches on Dragon and the International Space Station. Because this area was exposed to vacuum prior to docking, they need to have it filled with air to make sure its pressure is nearly equal with the atmospheric pressures on Dragon and the space station before hatches are opened. Again, the timing for hatch opening this morning is targeted at 3:15 a.m. Central.
Station on to first step 2.4, GMT time 0657.
Copy 657.
And we are getting a view from inside the International Space Station now as the crew, namely NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, works to step through those procedures to pressurize the vestibule. And we are hearing confirmation that Dragon is now receiving power from the International Space Station, so it's no longer relying on battery power or its solar arrays.
Dragon Houston, stand by for hardline audio config.
And Dragon copy, standing by.
And a view back inside the International Space Station. Again, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers is going to be prime for the responsibility of the hatch opening procedures today. You can see that zenith hatch there on your screen. The white circular portion that's a little deeper into the hatchway, and that pathway is called the pressurized mating adapter. It's the white hatch right there around it. That is called the APAS hatch, or the androgynous peripheral attach system. The international docking adapter, which is on the other side of the hatch, just right behind there, has been exposed to vacuum and the harsh conditions of space, including that intense sunlight and sunsets plus 200 degrees Fahrenheit plus or minus in the sun and shade respectively. So because of this introduces some significant thermal constraints and thermal conditions, as you might expect in that vestibule. And we are hearing that the vestibule has been repressurized by NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers. Again, she's prime for those procedures today. So next up, there will be a series of leak checks that occur. The pressurization needs to be equal to the pressure on board the International Space Station, which is about 14.7 pounds per square inch. Once that pressure is equalized, they'll be able to open up the hatches between Dragon, Endeavour, and the International Space Station, and the newly arrived Crew-11 will be able to float aboard at that point. Shortly after their arrival on board the International Space Station, we will have a welcome ceremony. We're again targeting that for 4:15 a.m. Central Time this morning. And we are in a brief handover period between our satellites. This is expected, and we will regain communication and views again here shortly, but you're looking at a live view inside Mission Control Houston, inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, which is being led by Ronak Dave, the flight director there in the center of your screen standing up. He led the team during this morning's docking. That docking occurred at 1:26 a.m. Central Time. And sitting directly to his right is the Capcom, or capsule communicator, who is prime for communicating with the crew on board the International Space Station as they step through the procedures this morning for the docking and hatch opening. And looking again at the Dragon Endeavour, which docked to the International Space Station at 1:26 a.m. Central Time this morning, following its launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida yesterday morning at 10:43 a.m. Central. Inside, again, that docking occurred at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning. Inside Dragon Endeavour are NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, as well as JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Kimiya Yui, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov. This view inside NASA's Mission Control Houston, inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room. We'll get views of Dragon and inside the International Space Station here shortly.
SpaceX Dragon seats drying.
And we are getting views once again of Endeavour docked to the zenith port of the International Space Station. Dragon is now getting power from the International Space Station, so no longer is reliant upon its solar arrays, which you can see at the top of your screen. There's the black portion on the Dragon's trunk.
Dragon Houston on the big loop. Com check. Hardline audio config complete.
Houston, Dragon on the big loop, loud and clear.
And we have you loud and clear as well.
And as NASA astronaut Zena Cardman continues to work through the procedures ahead of the hatch opening today, she did just communicate with the CAPCOM, or capsule communicator, here in Mission Control Houston as they completed some hardline communication checks. All of this ahead of a targeted hatch opening at 3:15 a.m. Central Time this morning, so just about an hour out from that milestone. Another view here of Endeavour docked to the zenith port of the International Space Station's Harmony module. Can really see a good view of those black solar arrays there at the top of your screen, which helped provide power for Endeavour on its ride uphill following launch from the Kennedy Space Center at 10:43 a.m. Central Time just yesterday. For this launch, it was a fairly short rendezvous period. Dragon docked at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning, so just about a 16-hour time period from launch to docking. Inside the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers has already worked to open the large hatch at Node 2 Zenith, which helped give her access inside the pressurized mating adapter. There you're seeing a view on your screen of that. She then worked to pressurize the vestibule, which is the small space between the hatches on Dragon and the space station. This was exposed to vacuum prior to docking and so needs to be filled with air to make sure its pressure is nearly equal with the atmospheric pressures on Dragon and the space station. So Ayers used a small valve on the station's hatch to slowly introduce air into the vestibule, and flight controllers here in Houston are now monitoring the pressure and temperature readings and completing a leak check to verify that everything is leak-free before we get ready to open up the hatches. And this is a view of the crew members currently on board the International Space Station, waiting to welcome the Crew-11, which docked again at 1:27 a.m. Central Time. Starting on the lower left of your screen is NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, then Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, NASA astronaut Johnny Kim, Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Ryzhikov, and Alexei Zubritsky, as well as JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, and finally NASA astronaut Anne McClain. At around 4:15 a.m. Central Time this morning, we will have a welcome ceremony, which includes not only our recently docked crew members of Crew-11, but also the Expedition 73 crew. So there will be 11 crew members living and working aboard the International Space Station for a few days, while Crew-11 completes a handover period with Crew-10 before they depart and splash down off the coast of California. Along with the 11 individuals in space we just discussed, there are 3 more that are living and working aboard the Chinese space station. So there currently are 14 people in space as we speak. While on board Space Station, Crew-11 will perform research and technology demonstrations, as well as conduct maintenance activities aboard the orbiting laboratory. Crew-11 will also contribute to NASA's Artemis campaign by simulating moon landing scenarios that astronauts may encounter near the lunar South Pole. This could help show how the space station will prepare crews for deep space human exploration. The simulations will also be performed before, during, and after their mission using handheld controllers and multiple screens to identify how changes in gravity affect spatial awareness and an astronaut's ability to pilot spacecraft like a lunar lander. Again, this view of the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft named Endeavour, which previously flew NASA's SpaceX Demo 2, Crew 2, Crew 6, and Crew 8, as well as a private astronaut mission entitled Axiom Mission 1, which was the first private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. This flight is the 11th crew rotation mission with SpaceX to Space Station as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, and overall the Crew-11 mission is the 16th crewed Dragon flight to the Space Station, including Demo 2 in 2020 and 11 operational crew rotations for NASA, as well as 4 private astronaut missions.
SpaceX Dragon pursuit fan.
Dragon, we're with you on the big loop.
Hey, we are 15 minutes into our suits drying. The suit fans were on, and the suit fan just suddenly turned off. I heard it audibly and verified in 5 alpha decimal 7 that the suit fan is off.
Okay, we copy. You just heard the suit fans turn off. We're going to take a closer look on the ground and get back to you.
Copy, thanks.
And that was NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers as they work through procedures inside of Endeavour, which includes removing their spacesuits following docking, sounding like the fan that is utilized to help dry those spacesuits did turn off, so the crew on the ground going to take a look at that. These spacesuits are worn during some of the more dynamic phases of flight, such as during launch and entry into orbit, as well as during the docking and undocking time period, as well as, of course, splashdown.
Houston Station on 2. We are ready for 2.102 on your go.
Hey, Nicole, you read our minds. Good leak check. You're a go for step 3.1.
Awesome. Go in step 3.1. Thanks.
And NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers reporting from the International Space Station that the leak checks are looking good for that vestibule repressurization. Again, that has to be done before the hatch can be opened, and there we are seeing a view of her on our screen as she works to open up that APAS hatch. This is the first space flight for NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers. She launched on Crew-10 on March 14th. Prior to her time at NASA, she is a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force.
And we concur. 0 DPDT.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for suit fan follow-up.
Ready to copy.
We took a closer look on the ground, and we do see that the suit fans are still running and have nominal telemetry. We did see that the waist fan turned off around the time of your call. Could that have been what you heard?
That is possible.
So we're tracking about 19 minutes into the suit drying period now.
Yeah, affirm. Our timer is about 20 minutes.
And this view of NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers as she works to open up the APAS hatch following the vestibule repressurization and leak checks, everything looking good.
On the big group, inventory report.
Kimiya, I'm with you on the big loop for the inventory report. Ready to copy.
Okay, first, water. 203, 1 remaining. 204, 4 remaining.
I copied 203, 1 remaining, 204, 4 remaining.
That's a good copy, and that's including the flashing this room. And next for the food, 302, 2 remaining. 304, 3 remaining.
I copied 302, 2 remaining, 304, 3 remaining.
That's all good copies. Thank you.
And Kimiya, can you report number of waste system uses?
We're going to report this for the private medical conferences. Sorry.
Copy that. No change from PMC.
That is true. Sorry, not that's true. We used a little bit more, but we're going to report during the PMC. Sorry.
Okay, copy additional uses and will report during PMC.
That's good copy. Thank you.
And those words from JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui reporting some of the supplies the crew used on the flight uphill. Continuing to get a view inside of the International Space Station, though, as NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers has put on some gloves and has acquired a camera. She's going to inspect the hatch for any FOD or foreign object debris to make sure everything is nice and clean before they do go ahead and open up the hatches. This is a very choreographed set of procedures.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for a follow-up question on water bottle inventory.
Go ahead.
Could you confirm inventory in bags 201 and 202?
So we're going to confirm 201 and 202, but we didn't use that. So I'm going to confirm that.
Okay, we copy no consumption from 201 or 202, and 203 and 204 were as reported.
That is correct.
And on your screen now appearing is JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi, who is helping Ayers with a light that he passed along as she works to photograph and inspect that area. And we do see that hatch open now. Again, Ayers is going to continue to inspect the area, take some photographs, and we'll send this down to the ground for further analysis ahead of the completion of hatch opening. And if you're just joining us this morning, you are looking at a live view inside the International Space Station as Nicole Ayers of NASA works to step through hatch opening procedures following the docking of Crew-11 at 1:20.
Station onto the ISS hatch is open, and there was no condensation.
Copy, hatch open, good report.
Following Crew-11's docking at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning. You did just hear her report out that following the APAS hatch opening, there was no reported condensation, so they'll continue to step through the rest of the carefully choreographed procedures ahead of hatch opening this morning. We are targeting 3:15 a.m. Central for that hatch opening, but that time frame can be a little bit flexible. Crew-11 launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida yesterday at 10:43 a.m. Central. Once the hatches are open and Crew-11 floats on board the International Space Station, we'll have a welcome ceremony this morning at 4:15 a.m. Central Time. During this welcome ceremony, the 4 astronauts on board Crew-11, as well as the 7 astronauts currently on board Space Station, will have the opportunity to give some remarks. And following the welcome ceremony, the crew will jump right into a safety briefing as they work through handover procedures with Crew-10, which will soon be departing the International Space Station, where they will splash down off the coast of California. This will be the very first crewed spacecraft for NASA's Commercial Crew program that splashes down off the coast of California. And now coming into view in the hatch area as well is NASA astronaut Johnny Kim. He monitored Crew-11's arrival to the International Space Station and their docking this morning from the space station's cupola. Air is now working to stow some of the tools that were utilized in that APAS hatch opening. Once this portion of the procedures is complete, the crew inside of the Dragon will then work to open up the hatch on their side. Following this, the IMV ducting that you saw, some of that orange and white hose-looking hardware will work to be further installed as well.
Houston Station and SpaceX Station on 2. Station is ready for Dragon hatch equalization.
SpaceX copies on the big loop.
And Houston copies on the big loop.
Houston and SpaceX Dragon copies. Dragon is ready for hatch equalization as well.
Station and Dragon, stand by for equalization. Expected to take 1 to 2 minutes.
And this view on your screen, there in the center of your screen, is NASA astronaut Johnny Kim assisting in the hatch opening procedures. Straight in front of him is that hatch that the crew has been working in that we've had a more close-up view of. And there is NASA astronaut Ann McClain. And back in closer of the hatch there, you can see Nicole Ayers as well as Johnny Kim continuing to step through those procedures.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, looking for permission to bring cameras back on board before we open the hatch.
SpaceX Dragon, we are good to go and just removed the video director override via 4.012.
We see it. Thank you. Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, you are go for hatch opening per the decal, followed by the remaining actions in 4.400. After 4.400 is complete, transition to NASA procedure 2.102, part Charlie.
Dragon copies. We are go for Dragon hatch open. We'll be starting that shortly, and after that, we'll complete 4.400 and transition to ISS procedure 2.102, section Charlie.
And you're looking at our first views inside of Dragon as the crew got out of their spacesuits and put them in a configuration to dry as per the procedures following docking. They're now working to open up the hatch on the Dragon Endeavour before they float on board the International Space Station. Again, 2 of them for the very first time. That will be NASA astronaut Zena Cardman and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov. This will be NASA astronaut Mike Fincke's 4th time on board space station and the 2nd for Kimiya Yui. And it looks like the Dragon hatch is in the process of being opened up. You can see it on the right side of your screen there in the top right.
Houston, SpaceX Dragon hatch is open.
Houston copies, hatch open.
And with that, the Dragon hatch is open. That hatch opening occurring at 2:46 a.m. Central Time, following a docking at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning. And with the hatches open, it will be just another moment before the crew does float aboard the International Space Station. They have some important closeout duties, including working through procedures with some lithium hydroxide canisters. Those are consumable carbon dioxide scrubbers used inside of Dragon, so they do want to conserve those carbon dioxide scrubbers. And back inside the International Space Station, on their hatch side, you see Johnny Kim there waiting to take some photographs of the crew as they float aboard. A little further in the hatch, I believe that is NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, who's stepping through those procedures for hatch open.
Step 6.1 at 2.102. IMV duct installation is complete. We are go for IMV fan activation.
We copy, putting that in work.
And back inside Dragon, the crew is stepping through those final preparations ahead of floating on board Space Station.
Dragon SpaceX on Dragon aground. The S-band will be deactivated shortly, so Dragon aground will no longer be available for comms. Please verify the push-to-talk destinations are set to ISS.
Dragon copies. Wilco.
And Dragon Houston on the big loop. When you get to step 6.3, you are go.
And Dragon copies Houston. We are ready for 6.3. We're opening location 23 at this time.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, 2.102, step 6.5. LiO cartridge 1 is sealed and installed.
SpaceX copies on the big loop. LiO cartridge is sealed and installed.
And those comms about that LiO cartridge that we did discuss earlier, which helps scrub the carbon dioxide from the Dragon capsule.
Houston and SpaceX Dragon arrival configuration complete.
Houston copies.
And SpaceX copies.
And as the crew continues to step through those procedures ahead of floating on board, it shouldn't be too much longer now, but as we mentioned, this is a carefully choreographed procedure, so we want to make sure everything is as expected and in a good configuration before they come on board Space Station. And this view inside of the International Space Station Flight Control Room, showcasing the team that has been working to step through the procedures with the crew for docking. And if you're just joining us, we are awaiting Crew-11 to come on board the International Space Station following their docking at 1:27 a.m. Central this morning. The hatches were opened at 2:46 a.m. and it looks like we are having our first crew member float aboard right now. That is NASA astronaut Mike Fincke for his 4th visit to the International Space Station. And it looks like his microgravity skills never left him. Joining in the hatch is NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, who has helped step through all of the hatch opening procedures. Once the crew does float on board the International Space Station, we are targeting a welcome ceremony this morning at 4:15 a.m. Central. Again, if you're just joining us, Crew-11 docked to the International Space Station's zenith port of the Harmony module at 1:27 a.m. Central Time. Now coming through the hatch is Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov. This is his very first visit to the International Space Station. Some big hugs there with NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers and Johnny Kim. And continuing to get a warm welcome aboard the International Space Station for him, again, first-time flyer. And next through the hatch is JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Kimiya Yui. And now we have NASA astronaut Mike Fincke for his 4th time to the International Space Station. And now coming into view is Zena Cardman. Again, her first time on board the International Space Station as well. Lots of smiles and hugs. 11 humans on board the International Space Station now. We are targeting a welcome ceremony this morning at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, rather. If you're just joining us, Crew-11 has just floated through the hatch of their Dragon spacecraft onto the International Space Station following their docking at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning. They did launch yesterday at 10:43 a.m. Central from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. With Crew-11's arrival to the International Space Station, the population on board is now 11 and will remain 11 crew members for a short time as Crew-10 and Crew-11 complete a brief handover period before Crew-10 undocks and splashes down off the coast of California.
Station Houston on 2 for Tocton, forward plan.
Go ahead on 2, Matt.
Hey, Doc, it was great seeing the crew arrive on board. Congratulations to everybody. And just wanted to circle back with you on the PAO event. We were, of course, thinking of it starting at 9:15, but we can also pull it earlier to start around 9:02. That's when KU locks up on that GDRS pass. And then we could do the PAO prep event scene, might check all that on the previous pass or whenever, just before that, if the crew wants to get that done early. So totally up to the crew.
Let's keep it at 9:15 because I already told Cosmos that way, so let's keep it.
Hey, that totally works for us. And while I have you, after the PO event, we can have another discussion on all the other days' activities, whether or not we're going to keep them scheduled as is or pull them forward to get you guys done early. So we'll have that conversation afterwards.
With that, basically we want to move everything earlier. Thank you.
That makes sense. Appreciate it.
And again, Crew-11 is now on board the International Space Station. We are targeting a welcome event with not only the recently arrived Crew-11 crew, but the 7 members of Expedition 73 as well. Now there are 11 people on board the International Space Station. We are targeting that welcome ceremony to begin at 4:15 a.m. Central, so just a little less than an hour from now. And if you're just joining us this morning, you're looking at a live view of the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour, which docked to the International Space Station at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning, following launch the day prior from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 10:43 a.m. Central. This morning, hatches were opened at 2:46 a.m., and we are now awaiting a welcome ceremony with all 11 crew members on board the International Space Station to begin at 4:15 a.m. Central Time this morning. And this view here on your screen, you do see Endeavour dock to the zenith port of the International Space Station. That's the space-facing port. There's another Dragon docked just below and to the left. You can see its nose cone sticking out there. That is docked to the forward port, or Earth-facing side of the International Space Station, which you can see in the background as it completes this day pass. The Crew-10 spacecraft, the other Dragon, will carry Crew-10 back aboard in the coming days, following a brief handover period with the recently arrived Crew-11 crew members. Crew-11 is the 11th crew rotation mission with SpaceX to the space station as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. And overall, the Crew-11 mission is the 16th crewed Dragon flight to the International Space Station, which includes Demo 2 in 2020 and 11 operational crew rotations for NASA, as well as 4 private astronaut missions. While on board Space Station for their science mission, the crew of Crew-11 will perform research, technology demonstrations, and conduct maintenance activities aboard the orbiting laboratory. And they'll also be on board Space Station for a very special milestone later this year. In November, the International Space Station will celebrate 25 years of continuous humans living and working aboard the International Space Station. During the last 25 years, over 280 individuals representing 26 countries and 5 international partners have visited the space station. Again, we are awaiting a welcome ceremony this morning to begin at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, just about 45 minutes from now, following the arrival of Crew-11 to the International Space Station at 1:27 a.m. Central. Crew-11 launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida yesterday at 10:43 a.m. Good morning from Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a live view of the spacecraft Dragon Endeavour docked to the zenith port of the International Space Station's Harmony module. Docking occurred this morning at 1:27 a.m. Central Time, and the hatches were opened a short time later at 2:46 a.m. Central Time. At this point, we are awaiting our welcome ceremony to begin at 4:15 a.m. Central, less than 40 minutes from now. Crew-11 carried NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, as well as JAXA, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Kimiya Yui, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov to the International Space Station, following their liftoff from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 10:43 a.m. Central on August 1st. And here on your screen is NASA astronaut Johnny Kim as he begins to get things set up and routed for today's welcome ceremony, targeted to begin at 4:15 a.m. Central. Johnny is completing his very first mission aboard the International Space Station after launching on board the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft on April 8th. Also on your screen is the current commander of the International Space Station, Takuya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. There are currently 2 JAXA astronauts on board Space Station following Kimiya Yui's arrival at 1:27 a.m. Central Time. Yui arrived on board Crew-11 with NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov, following their launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida yesterday, August 1st at 10:43 a.m. Central.
Station Houston on 2 for Johnny. We see you setting up the camera. We'll be ready for scene and voice whenever you are, right before the 9:15 PAO event.
Okay, copy. I'll catch you on the other side of this handover.
Sounds like a plan.
And again, we are targeting today's welcome ceremony to begin at 4:15 a.m. Central. You did just hear some words from the Capcom here in Mission Control Houston up to NASA astronaut Johnny Kim as he prepares to get cameras set up and complete a scene and voice check. Again, now just a little over 30 minutes away from today's event at 4:15 a.m. Central, where all 11 crew members on board the International Space Station will have the opportunity to provide some opening remarks and be welcomed aboard the International Space Station. And we are in a brief handover period between our satellites, but you're getting a live view inside of Mission Control Houston at some of the team that did work the shift this morning for docking. Again, that docking did occur at 1:27 a.m. Central Time, with hatches opening a short time later at 2:46 a.m. Central. Crew-11 launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on August 1st at 10:43 a.m. Central. And we are now awaiting a welcome ceremony to begin at 4:15 a.m. this morning. The team inside Mission Control Houston this morning has been led by Ronak Dave, the flight director on console, and sitting directly to his right is today's capsule communicator, who has been prime for communicating with the crew on board the International Space Station as they stepped through all of the hatch opening procedures. And NASA astronaut Johnny Kim on the right, continuing to work through some procedures ahead of today's welcoming ceremony. Joining him is the current commander of the International Space Station, Takuya Onishi, from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency.
And Johnny, no response required as you're cleaning up. We like the view, but we would just like it a little bit down towards the deck and then tilt or panned a little bit left towards the gem relative to the camera. We like the scene. Thanks, Johnny.
Station on 2, ready for the scene and voice check on node 2 cam 1. We also have node 2 cam 2 set up as a backup option in case cam 1 goes down.
Hey, we see both. Sounds like a plan. And stand by 1, Johnny. And Johnny, that was a good voice check. We'll sync up with you guys for the event at 9:15. And actually, Johnny, if you're offering up, we'll take the backup voice check as well on the other camera. Sorry to make you float away. Yeah, and Johnny, we're not hearing you come down on that one. And Johnny, we don't need the troubleshoot. We like the primary, so no worries there. Copy, thumbs up.
And with a good scene and voice check, we are looking ahead towards today's welcoming ceremony to begin at 4:15 a.m. Central Time this morning.
Station Houston on 2 for cupola shutters.
On 2.
Hey, so we're getting close to a cupola temp constraint, which will require us to close the shutters. The last thing you'd want to do is interrupt you guys during the PAO event to do so. So we're going to ask you to go ahead and close those shutters. And we definitely apologize to our new crewmates who are probably looking out at the views right now, but we'll make it up to you guys in the back end.
Copy, and they are currently closed.
Copy all. Thank you.
And we did just hear some communications there about the cupola shutters. The cupola is the portion of the International Space Station that is lovingly known as the window to the world. Essentially, it's an area that crew members are able to look outside the window and take amazing photography of our home planet. They do have a set of protective shutters outside of the windows of the cupola that can be open and closed for protective reasons, and so that call up to the crew to go ahead and preemptively close those cupola shutters was what that communications was about. And we are now 20 minutes out from the start of today's welcome ceremony at 4:15 a.m. Central Time. If you are just joining us, you are looking at a live view inside the International Space Station ahead of that welcoming ceremony. We did have Crew-11 that docked to the International Space Station Zenith port of the International Space Station's Harmony module at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning. Following that, hatches were opened at 2:46 a.m. Central Time. All of this following their launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida the day prior at 10:43 a.m. Central. So soon we will have that welcome ceremony where all 11 crew members on board the International Space Station will get to participate in this event, officially welcoming Crew-11 of NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, as well as JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, Kimiya Yui, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov on board the International Space Station. For some statistics for you, this is Cardman's very first space flight, as well as Platonov's. It's the 4th space flight for NASA astronaut Mike Fincke, and the 2nd for Kimiya Yui. And we are now 15 minutes out from today's welcome ceremony, beginning at 3:15 a.m. Central Time. And as we await today's welcome ceremony starting in a few minutes at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, you're looking at a live view inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the team did work through procedures today for not only the docking, but the vestibule repressurization and then eventually hatch opening. The team on console during today's shift was led by Ronak Dave, the flight director on console during docking this morning. And the team here in the room did help to get on board NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, as well as JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov following their docking at 1:27 a.m. Central Time. The quartet of Crew-11 did launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida yesterday, August 1st at 10:43 a.m. Central. And you're looking at a view there of the Endeavour spacecraft docked to the zenith port of the International Space Station's Harmony module. To the lower left of the Endeavour spacecraft is another Dragon that will actually be returning Crew 10 back to Earth in the coming days. Crew 10 is going to work on a handover with Crew 11 that of course just arrived again this morning at 1:27 a.m. Central Time. Following that handover period, Crew 10 will undock and splash down off the coast of California, and this will actually be the very first time that humans splash down off the coast of California as part of NASA's Commercial Crew program. Just a few weeks ago, Axiom 4 did splash down off the coast of California as part of NASA's a private astronaut mission aboard the International Space Station. So again, we're just about 10 minutes out from this morning's welcome event, beginning at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, where all 11 crew members currently on board the space station will join and participate. And you're getting a live look inside the International Space Station as NASA astronaut Mike Fincke, now on his 4th trip to space station, does a little microgravity flying. We are targeting our welcome ceremony to begin here in just a few minutes at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, so we'll start to see all 11 crew members come into frame. On the left there is NASA astronaut Anne McClain. And on the right is the current space station commander of JAXA, Tokoya Onishi. And now joining in the frame is JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui. This is Yui's 2nd trip to the International Space Station. And we will go ahead and stand by for just a couple minutes longer ahead of the welcome ceremony today at 4:15 a.m. Central Time. If you're just joining us, Crew-11 docked to the International Space Station's zenith port of the Harmony module at 1:27 a.m. Central Time this morning. At 2:46 a.m. Central, hatches were opened. All of this following their launch on August 1st at 10:43 a.m. Central from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for welcome remarks.
Please begin the welcome ceremony.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody on the ground from the International Space Station. And Endeavour crew, welcome on board. Yokoso, Dabro Pajalbach. And we are so happy and excited to see your smiling faces. And Zena, Oleg, congratulations on your first space flight. We are looking forward to hearing your impressions and your feelings about that. And Mike and Kimiya, welcome back. Your experience will be an invaluable asset for Expedition 73. And we have a very busy handover period ahead of us, but I'm really looking forward to working with each of you. So now I will pass the microphone to Crew-11 Commander Zena Cardman.
You can tell I'm new. Hello. This has been the absolute journey of a lifetime. We are so incredibly grateful to be here. Thank you so much for this warm welcome. It was such an unbelievably beautiful sight to see the space station come into our view for the first time, especially with these wonderful crewmates. Oleg and I, both for the first time, and of course Mike and Kimiya-san have so much experience that they bring to this team. With deep gratitude to everyone who got us ready for this moment. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Zena, and thank you to the Expedition 73 crew. You have made us feel so welcome. We're so glad to be here. We're happy to join you, and we will do our best to help the 73 crew who's on Crew 10 to get home safely. Your friends and family are waiting for you. In the meantime, this is a beautiful space station, and it's so good to be back, and we're here to take good care of it and help do our very best.
Oh, thank you very much for warm, full, very, very good welcome. And I'm so grateful to be here. We have great Crew-11 crew members and also this expedition members. Yeah, I'm very looking forward to working with them and make this Expedition 73 the best. I'll work hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimiya-san. I'm Oleg Platonov, and I'm also would like to say thank you very much for so warm meeting, and I believe and I hope we will have incredible and unbelievable time on board. И спасибо моим коллегам, будущим соэкипажникам. Я также благодарю вас за такую теплую встречу. И спасибо всем на Земле, кто готовил меня и наш экипаж и сделал все возможное, чтобы отправить нас сюда. Мы обещаем выполнить все наши задачи на самые высокие оценки и продвигать человечество в области космонавтики только вперед. Спасибо.
Ура. С энтузиазмом.
Thank you, guys, and once again, welcome on board the International Space Station. And Houston, back with you. That concludes our event.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications. Station Houston, back with you on to for big picture rest of the day.
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, Talk. We were thinking of hopping right into the ISS safety briefing. And then for the rest of the day, we're going to try to move everything to the left as much as possible. The only exceptions would be the pink cipher ops and then the non-Crew-11 PMCs. We think we can get everything else done earlier today. The only thing we ask is we keep those blue activities somewhat in the same order chronologically, just to make sure that we're all in sync. How copy?
Okay, copy all. Basically, we move everything to the left except for Fincke activity and also non-Crew-11 related PMC.
That is a good readback. Ready when you are.
And we are going to just start a safety briefing so you guys can send a test command for caution warning tones.
Okay, sounds like a plan. We will give you a call when we're ready to send those.
Copy that.
And there you had it, a very warm welcome to Crew-11 on board the International Space Station following their launch August 1st at 10:43 a.m. Central Time. They docked today at 1:27 a.m. Central to the zenith port of the International Space Station. Following that, hatches were opened at 2:46 a.m. and we just wrapped up an incredible welcome ceremony where Crew-11 is now safely on board. You can follow along with the mission on social media and by checking the daily space station blog, but that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for following along on Crew-11's journey. Go NASA, go SpaceX, go Crew-11. This is Mission Control Houston.